Well, hey there, friends. Together we are back and we are live with Trans Northland for another, what I know is going to be an incredible conversation with our guest star, who I will bring onto the stage here momentarily. But for those of you who don't know, my name is Sean Hayes and my pronouns are he, him, and his. And I am a co-founder and the executive director here at Trans Northland. And I'm so excited to be able to do this show and to get to introduce all of our community friends to new folks in the community who are doing cool things and making waves in really awesome ways. So I'm excited to welcome onto our stage our guest for this conversation. And guest star, would you please introduce yourself?
Hi, yes, my name is Kobey Layne. I use she, her pronouns, and I am a candidate for Minnesota State Governor.
Yes, welcome, welcome. We are so glad to have you. And like I said, just to get into it, learn a little bit more about you and your story and what brought you to this moment where you are, I think you had said, the first ever known trans person to run for governor in Minnesota.
Yes, so I was doing a little bit more research into this, and we don't know for certain if I'm the first person of trans identity to run for governor. But as of now, we haven't had anybody who has filed an affidavit of candidacy going into a primary of someone who has trans identity. So that's kind of an exciting first that I get to hold once we get up to that filing period.
Very, very cool. Oh my goodness. Well, yeah, thank you so much for taking the time to join us here and to have this conversation with me. And yeah, to introduce yourself a little bit more to our Northland, northern Minnesota community.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes. So, for our wonderful viewers and community members who've tuned in before, we always like to start off these conversations with our gender joy segment. And so, if you don't know, this is something that we like to ask our guests, which basically is like share a moment that you've recently experienced gender euphoria or gender joy, as we call it. So this could be anything from I bought a new outfit that makes me feel so good and like affirms my identity, or it could be I came out as trans and that felt so great, so it could be really anything. And so, yeah, Kobey, I'm curious if you have a gender joy story to share.
Yeah. The one that comes to mind, and it's maybe more of a simple example, but I had one of those moments where you look in the mirror and you just no longer see the man that you once were. Um, and for me, there's something beautiful about realizing that I was playing a character in a story that wasn't mine. And so getting to be my most authentic self is so liberating. Knowing that I get to be the person that I am with how happy I am in my most authentic self for the rest of my life. It was exciting for me, even though it was a very simple moment a couple days ago in front of the mirror, and it brought me a lot of joy.
Oh my goodness, I love that so much for you. And I totally know that feeling. And I'm also like so lucky and grateful to be able to say that I have moments like that more and more where it's just like I see me in the fullness and like who I have been always meant to be. And yeah, so it's such a good feeling. And it's
It is
why I
very
love
wonderful.
starting these conversations like this. Because yeah, hopefully trying to bring and share joy and then spread that out, into the community. And so I guess for me, I don't know that it's like a specific thing, but I've just been having a lot of conversations lately with folks, and then I've like shared how long it's been since I came out and like since I started hormones myself, and I'm in double digits. And like it just like still blows my mind because I remember like that first day getting my first T shot and being like, I want to be the trans guy 10 years on T. And now I've surpassed that, and it just feels so like, what is this real life? Because it's so good.
I agree. It's a magical feeling that I wish so many other people would get to experience that kind of euphoria.
Seriously, it is the best. And so, yeah, so thanks for everybody, listening, tuning into our Gender Joy segment. And I would just encourage you, right? Like, we have these moments all the time, things around us in our country, in our communities, feels real stressful all the time lately. That's sort of just the life that we're living right now. But there are so many moments of joy happening. And so I'd encourage y'all to think about something that brought you joy today or recently. And now, yeah, we're going to slide into our events highlight section of our conversation, which is where we like to tell you about what we've got coming up for Trans Northland. And there's a lot coming up, y'all. So first off, we have our next Show Up Squad get together, which is going to be this Saturday, April 11th, starting at 5 p.m. at Studio Cafe. And we are showing up as a squad to the Queer Game Club that meets there at Studio Cafe. And so show up if you are a gamer. There's going to be like a larger campaign game happening. I myself will be arriving, probably with my child, so we may bring Candyland. So show up. And just a reminder, this is just a cool new initiative we're trying where we can show up and support other groups and what they're doing in community, because we really want to be building solidarity right now and building power among all of us. So show up on Saturday. And then coming up, we have our event, which is our Be Safe, Get Tested STD HIV testing event. This is the second time now that we have done this, and it's coming up on April 25th. Last year we did this for the first time. We teamed up with We Health Clinic, and it was such an amazingly set up event, and we had a low turnout. And we wondered, is that because there's still so much stigma, right, around testing, around safe and healthy sex practices? And so we're doing it again, y'all. And this time, last year it was a Friday. This time we're trying a Saturday afternoon. So come down. There'll probably be good snacks. This year we're joined with or by our Black Boots Twin Ports group as well. They're going to be there with a lot of their harm reduction stuff, free giveaways that they have. So come, say hey, probably eat a snack, get tested. Yeah, and just show up for that on April 25th. And yeah, and then like Trans Joy Fest is going to be here before we know it, y'all. So if you're a vendor, if you're someone who wants to be a performer at Trans Joy Fest, and if you want to sponsor, get in contact with us. We're going to be releasing a lot of that information real soon. So keep an eye out on the socials for all those details. And I think that's going to wrap us up on our events calendar updates, which is exciting because that means we're going to get into our deeper conversation here with our amazing guest star. And so, yeah, just thanks again for taking the time, Kobey, to come and talk to us. And to start us off, I would like you to tell us more about the community work that you do. I know that you're located in the Twin Cities area, and so those of us up here may not be as familiar with what's going on down there. But yeah, if you want to share about that, that would be cool.
Absolutely. Before I go to that, I just want to say I appreciate that you're promoting sober spaces, like with your game club night. That is so important for our communities at large, but particularly the LGBTQIA plus two spirit communities. Also advocating to make sure people know their status. It is so important. And I'm proud to say I myself am on the Yas to Go shot. It's important to take preventative measures for yourself and not, doing the right call for you. You shouldn't be afraid to do it. But yeah, a little bit about me. My name is Kobey Layne. I am one of the leads with Tea Time, which, for those of you who do not know, is the largest peer-led support network for Transfemmes in the Twin Cities. We do a lot of work around just creating sense of community, because having community is one of the building blocks to help fighting HIV transmission, making sure that people have support networks to fall on, and just making sure that we're there for each other. I've also done some other like private community organizing. There's one event that I've organized at a local bar that's grown to be it's actually on Tuesday nights. It's where I'll be after this. But at least 100 people, and it's just essentially a giant trans takeover night. And it grew slowly and then all at once. It started in 2023. But yeah, I've been very active in making sure that like community spaces, making sure people feel seen. A lot of times community organizing gets too much lost as like these institutions, but it really starts with those personal connections that start first. And then oftentimes an organization will come out of that. So truly it's about just at the end of the day, meeting your neighbors, whether that's near or far. Yeah.
I love that. And I mean, you almost could have just been telling Trans Northland's story too, because when we first started up, it was just a couple of folks who would host a support group in like this room that had this burnt orange shag carpet. And then now, yeah. And then 10, 11 years later, we're a nonprofit and we sort of have like followed that path you just said. And so I love to hear it. And I'm realizing now like two things I should have mentioned. So number one, we're usually live coming to you on Wednesdays at noon, but because of Kobey's schedule, we wanted to make sure we could get her on. So yeah, we are pre-recording this Tuesday night. So last night, if you're watching live tomorrow. Anyways, it's a time vortex over here. And then secondly, yeah, Kobey, I'm meant to be like, tell us more about your story. So you talked a little bit about that community work that you're involved in right now, but who is Kobey? Like, how did you come up? Tell us a little more about yourself.
Yeah. My coming out story. So I was in 9th grade when I came out as a gay man, and I lived mostly happily as a gay man for quite some time. And then it took me getting laid off from the Minnesota Senate in 2022 after the election, and I was living alone. I was unemployed, so I had a lot of time on my hands to do a lot of thinking. And one of the pieces that I came to terms with was that I felt like I didn't exist if I wasn't with other people. And that was kind of the precursor understanding to you're living a life that isn't yours. You perform this version of yourself for other people. So when you're by yourself, I found that like I felt like I was very unsettled, very unhappy. I took a trip during my unemployment. I went out to Los Angeles. I'd always wanted to take a solo trip. I'd heard that it's really good for just getting to know oneself in an uncomfortable environment. And it was my first night in Long Beach. I would happen to be at a bar, and I met this Black trans woman named Kia, and she spotted me and was just like, I sense your feminine energy. And we got through, did a lot of talking, and she explained to me this metaphor that I love. It's the metaphor of being on a train. So when it comes to gender journeys, a lot of people feel like they get on a train to pursue themselves, and maybe they get off at the stop, and that's just trying on some makeup every once in a while at home. And for some people, maybe that's just not enough. So they get back on the train. And then maybe at the next stop, they get off, and maybe that's, trying out a new name or going out in public in the apparel that is most affirming for them. And for some people, that's still not enough. And so maybe they come out at work. And for some people, it's still not enough. And then at later stops, it might be hormones. At an even further stop, maybe it's surgical interventions to help help the body align with one's gender. And I thought that was just a beautiful way to encapsulate what a thoughtful and slow process a gender journey is. Some people in this country would like to believe that people just go from zero to hero, but that is very not the case with many of the individuals that I've met. That it really is a slow reckoning with who we really are and how we can best find that gender piece within us. Um, Long story short, Kia gave me permission to just be myself for the rest of the trip. And then come to find out it was San Diego Pride too. So I took the Amtrak down there and that was a wonderful experience. Um, and then I came back from that trip and now it was, you have the feelings that you have now of like where your authenticity needs to go. Now we need to start telling people. And that was kind of nerve wracking. I found my first job after this would have been like 9 months of unemployment. Honestly, when I found this job, it was like I didn't know where I was going to pay my next month's bill. And so I got this job, and I even was just like, they asked me, what pronouns do you want to use? And I said she, her. This is the first time in a formal work setting I decided that I'm going to pursue this. And after my first day at the job, I remember calling my mom to tell her how the day went, and we were about ready to hang up. And I, I remember telling her, "Oh, by the way, I came out as a trans woman at work, and I figure I should tell you that's a big part of how my day went too." Um, in another lifetime, maybe I would have broke the news to my mother in a different way, but generally, I had a very slow but wonderful experience with coming to terms with myself. Yeah.
Yes. Oh my goodness. And I love to hear that. And that is such a great metaphor. Because yeah, it really, there's no, one-stop shop, there's not one way to be trans, to be non-binary, gender expansive, right? And so I love that you just like took this solo trip. I was just talking to somebody about that earlier today, and I was like, I would be afraid to do that. So props to you, and that it was like this huge sort of moment in your own, journey and development. And I really love that for you. And that, it isn't a rush and it doesn't happen quickly for most of us. I think that is also key to note because, as you said, there are people in this country who will tell you, will tell you to be afraid that if you send your kid to school, they might come home and be the opposite gender of what they went in the morning. And that is not the case. I would go as far as to say insane. And also, that is just not how it happens. And so a lot of the sort of propaganda that we hear in the media about trans folks, I mean, talk to a trans person, and most of us will tell you it was a long time coming for most of us. So I just appreciate you sharing that part of your story, and I know all of the like trans folks listening, we get it. It is. It's like every journey is unique and special. We're all special unicorns.
And I appreciated your the part that you said about learning that there's no right way to be trans. And I recall a memory from my early transition where a friend had invited me to a mutual friend's transiversary barbecue. And it was quite literally the first time in my life I had seen more than like two trans people in a room. And so to have every genre of trans person out there, like you had your flowery girls, you had your goth baddies, you had the girls at the table playing Magic the Gathering. Like it was so liberating that I realized, no, you do get to be yourself. It's about your authenticity, not playing a different role just as maybe the gender opposite, gender other than the one you were assigned at birth.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Totally. Yeah. It's like the opportunity for us to quit acting and really get real about who we are, who we want to be. And I just love that. I think trans folks are sort of way ahead of the larger society when it comes to these sorts of like self-reflection kind of things, like because we do take a lot of time to kind of figure out what is this part of my identity and what does it mean for me, and all of that. So oh my gosh, yes, be you, be all authentic you. That is always what we'll tell people. But yeah, and so transitioning. I need like a ching
Yeah,
sound
yeah.
for my dad jokes, bad dad trans jokes. Transitioning to our next question though, and I'm really curious and excited for you to share more about this journey now that you're on running for governor of Minnesota. And let me just say, when I think I got an email from either you or your campaign manager, kind of sharing a little bit about who you were. And I was just like, what? A trans person is running for Minnesota governor?
You
I
betcha.
gotta meet this person. I gotta hear this story. And then I want to get the story out to the community, so folks can hear about who you are. And then if they're interested in getting involved, learning more, volunteering, I'm sure there's lots of ways that you can
Absolutely.
share. But yeah, so I'm going to pop this up on the camera. So will you share the story of how you decided to run for governor as the first out trans person that we know of to do so? Oh no, we froze. Did you
So
hear me?
I'm setting the stage. Yes, it's mid to late January, and we're hearing that Governor Walz is dropping out of the race, and that there's rumors that Amy Klobuchar is going to run for governor, which I don't think comes as necessarily a surprise to many. But I was surprised when I saw that there was no one else running for this race, and as a little bit about me as well, like I'm generally someone who doesn't ask someone to do something that I'm not willing to do myself. So instead of in my world feeling like complaining that we don't have any progressive candidates, I decided to step up to meet this moment and say I will make sure that progressive values are represented in this. I just think that with everything going on with the president's administration, the one big beautiful bill, budget cuts, like so many people are going to be kicked off their health care. So many people are going to lose their homes under federal occupation if people can't get to work to make an income, to pay their landlords. To me, a lot of getting in this race has been about learning to meet this moment and knowing that we need a coalition in order to get across the finish line. And so that's why we've been proactive about reaching out to different communities. Example, this weekend, Sunday through Tuesday, we're going to be doing a tribal listening session tour of 6 of the 7 Anishinaabe tribes or Ojibwe tribes in northern Minnesota. So we're going to go visit Leech Lake, White Earth, Red Lake, Boy Fort, Fond du Lac, and then Grand Portage as well. Because to this campaign, it is so important that we are meeting people where they're at and not asking them to serve our politics. It's about making those connections and honorable connections at that. And I just think that that's something that's been really missing from our electorate. Like it feels like people are upset with establishment Democrats, especially ones that are more in the center. After everything we've been through, Minnesotans are expecting substantial systems level change in this election. With the advent of AI coming and treated as it's inevitable, I think we need a moratorium on data center production in this state, at least until we have a framework in place to regulate them. I think it's also about having a comprehensive LGBTQIA plus Bill of Rights as well. We are no strangers to knowing that there are very little protections for trans folks in this state beyond, just the trans refuge bill that was passed in 2023. So it's making sure that we're codifying protections for students and for teachers to make sure that they are protected when they're just discussing their personal lives, without being seen as trying to introduce woke gender ideology into the classroom. It's making sure that we are protecting trans healthcare for minors. In this campaign, we leave no one behind with our coalition. We're not leaving Indigenous communities behind. We're not leaving trans minors behind in this process. It is quite literally all of us or it is none of us. If standing up for trans minors is what cost me the primary, so be it. That people will have spoken, but it would be a disservice to our community to leave them behind and say that that it's okay to leave them behind.
Most definitely. I love that. And I mean, there's so many things I could say in response to that, but I mean, the piece around healthcare for trans youth, I mean, that is just so much on the forefront of many of our minds right now. I mean, obviously places that are more conservative states, away from us, have already enacted bans on gender affirming care. And as of now, that care remains legal and protected here in the state of Minnesota. And yet we are having, hospitals that are, stopping or pausing, offering that kind of care to our trans youth in our communities. And I know, like, we just heard the news that Children's Minnesota is like unpausing their pause. And I believe they were like tied up in, like in a lawsuit about all of that. And so we are so glad to hear that they are, going to be offering that care again to all of the hundreds of families that they serve, down y'all's way. And yet then we're also hearing of hospitals in our area here in the Northland, as well as throughout the state, that are, toying with this idea of canceling and pausing or stopping altogether this care. And so I just want to highlight that, yeah, you're exactly right. We need candidates who are going to be able to say those things and bring our trans youth into the room and fight for them, right? Because if we don't do it, no one else is going to do it. So I just want to, just like applaud what you said there, because if we're not taking care of our youth, what is all of this for, right? Except for them to come up and then hopefully inherit good things from us. And I also just want to highlight too, I think you were referring to like the Equal Rights Amendment that like Gender Justice has been working hard on, and so many other groups and agencies, I'm sure. So to see something like that get passed, I mean, that would be historic, and that would grant a lot of protections, I think, to all the folks in our communities.
I agree. And yes, it is about the ERA amendment and making sure that we just have anti-discrimination in our Constitution. But I want to make sure that it's also inscribed in law, spelt out the specific ways in which we cannot be discriminated against, because this is about making sure that we have those codified protections, not just a constitutional amendment to sue under retroactively.
Yes. Oh, good point. And I know for folks like me, I get confused about all the political, we're not taught a lot of these details. But yeah, more rights for all of our communities. That is what you are fighting for, and folks with the ERA are fighting for. And so, yeah, I'm just excited to, again, just be introducing you to our community. And I'm actually I'm gonna pop up, the website where you can learn more and see everything, that Kobey is running on and campaigning for. We'll get to that just in a minute here. Kobey, I meant to ask you this ahead of time, so I'm gonna put you a little bit on the spot here, but I know we have talked about this ahead of time. And so for folks who, check out your website and they're interested in learning more, they may find out that like you grew up in a home, I think, that was pretty Republican, pretty conservative. You and I think, share that experience. And so I'm curious what you might say to folks who would say, well, she's got this history. And how can, maybe like that, the question is, how can we trust someone who, used to be a Republican? And so politics are hard to talk about, but also I think it's important to ask those questions and hear folks' stories.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I know that my story isn't unique. The thing I come back to is we are bigger than the worst things that we have ever done. As it stands now, I live with the shame of having been a Republican, but that shame does nothing to serve our communities. For me to wallow in this shame doesn't move the conversation or policy forward. So I own it and I take responsibility for that was a person that I was. But I will also say that poverty is pretty radicalizing. If you know anybody who's ever battled with homelessness or near homelessness, I have gotten to see that the systems are not designed to be our friends. They are designed to allow for our exploitation. Our struggle feeds the corporate class, the Epstein class. Um, yeah, I think about often like how much I have changed. Like I am definitely someone who is pro-choice, and a lot of that has come through my gender transition and realizing bodily autonomy is all wrapped up in one. If we allow the government to tell trans people what they can do with their bodies, they can tell cis women what they can do with their bodies. And so it's, even like we think about sex work, then they can tell them what they can do with their bodies. But if we're rooted in bodily autonomy, we need to make sure that people are centered in the ways that they can use their body. It's not the government's decision in any way. And it's fighting for that to make sure bodily autonomy is represented in our policies.
Most definitely. Yeah. The trans rights, bodily autonomy, all of that, it's all interconnected. And so, yeah, I really appreciate you saying that because, yeah, I mean, the fight for trans rights is directly tied to so many cis women's rights to their bodily autonomy. And so I feel like the sooner folks can understand that and like join together, in these coalitions we're talking about building community power, building solidarity across communities. And then in order to enact change at this political, legislative level in our state, to make it a safer place for everyone who's here now and all of the folks, we know there's tons of trans migrants who have been coming into our state just in the last year due to everything going on in the attacks against our community. And so it's just more important than ever that we're building that solidarity. And I also would just share, as someone who also grew up, I'm sure our stories are similar in some ways and different in a lot, but growing up in a family is tough. You don't always know what you believe, right? Until you get a little older and you get out into the world and you have some experiences and you learn from other people's stories and from their experiences. And that's what we need folks to be doing, is growing, learning, and shifting our perspectives as we learn that there's a better way, or a more, or like a less harmful way, maybe, is what I mean. But yeah, I just appreciate you sharing, because it's a trip as someone who also, yeah, I just
It's kind of like
yeah.
it's been a kind of a journey of like when you know better, you should do better. Like something that I have learned in the last few years is a healthy level of accountability is actually quite liberating. It's okay to say, this is what I believed at this time. This is what I've learned. This is what I'm going to stand up for now. If people if our elected leaders could just healing our beliefs in electoralism, I think that, yeah, I just having a healthy mode of accountability and transparency is so important in an elected leader. And I'm glad that I have learned that skill going into this election.
Definitely. Oh my goodness. Accountability and transparency. I feel like are so key, and are so absent oftentimes when it comes to politicians. And so, yeah, I really appreciate you bringing that in. And so as we, continue in our conversation, I'd love to hear more about your vision, like a larger vision for Minnesota. And then if you want to talk about like how could folks learn more, what ways could folks get involved in your campaign if they're looking to support? Yeah, just tell us more about all that.
Yeah, absolutely. The main central focus of this campaign is making sure, one, our policies are generally geography neutral, but it's about more than just investments for the sake of investments. It's about taking control of our system as the working class. So it's making investments in worker cooperatives and cooperative enterprise, whether that's like an agricultural cooperative, a producer, consumer, worker cooperative, so that we can finally make sustainable economic exit from this corporate system. However, it does not how much money we lend these businesses if we don't uncouple our healthcare from our employers, ones that which corporations will always be able to dangle over us. So we need to pass Medicare for all, universal health care, but also universal child care. Once we remove those barriers, people can actually leave their corporate jobs, because the goal is to make corporations not just compete against corporations. It's about making corporations compete with other models of business that support more dignity for the working class. Because either people are going to leave because they can get better wages, benefits at worker cooperatives, or they'll stay at corporations, but corporations will have to pour more money and benefits into their people, which is, at the end of the day, what we want. Corporations aren't inherently, well, I will say that it's a pretty evil system, um, but yeah, it's basically about creating sustainable exit from our corporate system. And so it's passing a bonding bill that will help get infrastructure projects, particularly in green energies. We try to get to 100% green energy by 2040. It's moving the needle on that. And all of that will help pour state dollars into the hands of the working class, not a proxy through corporations that won't trickle down. Um, Other parts of the vision. Oh, absolutely. The LGBTQIA plus Bill of Rights. Like you said, with Minnesota being a trans refuge state, this is so important that we're not re-traumatizing a lot of people who left their home states because it was a more hostile environment. We need to make sure that people can feel safe here and feel as though the legal framework also protects them, not just their neighbors informally. Um, Making sure we have quality public schools. Like I said, the goal is to get resources in the hands of our communities at the worker level. So it's making sure that teachers are paid adequately. I was on an Education Minnesota screening process, and I fully endorse. I think that teachers should get $60,000 a year minimum. The public school system is a wonderful vehicle for making sure we get financial resources even into like rural communities. It's not a new concept that rural Minnesota needs some serious economic revitalization. I think that this worker cooperative model or investments in this model will do really well for all communities across the state, because it's not about the state telling these communities what they need. It's enabling these communities to say, hey, we have an opportunity for commerce. We don't have access to capital, but we can get a loan so that we can start up this business. And it'll be a business model that is ran and owned by and for the employees that actually do the work. So maybe that looks like a number of farmers in Southwest Minnesota get together and start an agricultural co-op, or maybe they join Land O'Lakes, which I recently learned is an agricultural cooperative itself. Maybe that's maybe some more tourist industries in northern Minnesota. Maybe they have more restaurants, more leisure, more recreation to attract tourists to come enjoy lake life in northern Minnesota. Maybe that's just more another business or two for historically marginalized communities, like down in the cities and even across the state, as we think about indigenous communities too. It's about enabling opportunity, because a lot of corporations and of the elite class would love to say that our communities don't have the knowledge, don't have the skills to run successful businesses, and that's why we need them. But the fact of the matter is, a lot of the people who live here in Minnesota, we're the ones working for corporations, making them money. So there has to be some level of competence to do these tasks. So this campaign is really a belief in the people that we can do this. We need to take control of our economy again, and I want the state to enable that work.
Definitely. Oh my gosh. I mean, yeah, everything you're saying about just like, I mean, almost upending the system, right? Which is kind of what needs to happen, thinking about our working class and all of the folks who are living in poverty in this state, and there's just so much more work to be done. And I think, sort of flipping the systems is what is going to be required, rather than just reform the broken system. I think the systems are crumbling around us. We're watching that every day, on Twitter and all, wherever you're getting your updates about our current like federal government. But dang, I mean, and that is what it's about. And there's so many of us, right? There's so many more of us than sort of that corporate elite 1% group. And those of us who are really struggling, like, we need to see some really effective change happen, and that is across communities, right? And it has to be bringing those folks in those communities to the table, like you mentioned, like the fact that you're going around and talking with the different tribes, and coming up to Fond du Lac, which is like our neck of the woods. That is key, right? Coming and talking to folks in the LGBT community about, what does this look like? How do we make life better, so like less of us are just trying to survive every day, making ends barely meet. We can do better. And I think that our leaders can and need to do better. So I like what you're saying, Kobey. And then I also wanted to just mention too, like you mentioned the trans refuge bill, and like how important it is for Minnesota to really codify equal rights for LGBT plus folks as a whole, right? As the entire community. But then, yeah, like thinking about how excited I was hearing like, oh, we're a trans refuge state, to then like very quickly realizing, well, that's really only a name right now. Like, we're saying the right things, but where's the funding to create the infrastructure for all of the trans migrants and like families of trans youth who are coming to our state, who are going to enrich and make our communities more diverse and beautiful? There's nowhere for them to go right now. So like, put your money where your mouth is, kind of, if that makes sense. Like, yes, let's be the refuge state, and then let's actually create things to sustain and like enable that to be actually true,
Yes, because ultimately we love to talk about, needing to exit the corporate system, and so it's finally taking like this theory and practice, and we're using the state to use that as a very serious lever to get resources to get this going. Because at the rate it's going, we are not going to be able to keep up with artificial intelligence. For example, like if we think about current global events, like with Iran closing the Strait of Hormuz, like if the petrodollar fails in the next 1 month, 1 year, 4 years, we need to make sure that our infrastructure has been adequately funded before the fall of the US dollar, because we're going to have a whole host of issues. So it's kind of getting ahead of the curve in some ways. I hope that catastrophe doesn't happen and that the US dollar doesn't fail. But should it happen, I think we will have wished that we had invested sooner.
Mm-hmm. No doubt. Yeah. And I think we have to be thinking long term for sure. I mean, ooh, and it is scary to think about some of the possible outcomes, as you said, and we hope for the best. And those of us who are trying to care for communities and all the different ways that we do that politically, within the community, etc. It is really wise, I think, for us to be ahead of the curve to sort of strategize ahead of those possible outcomes, to better be able to care for our communities in those cases. But gosh, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of work to be done, I think, in this country. Many of us, I think, tuning in here would agree. And there's plenty of work to still be done here in Minnesota. And I also want to just say, like, there are a lot of rights and protections here in this state. And so, like, we want to just see those continue to expand to cover all of the folks in our communities, not just the ones with the most privilege, right? But yeah, I mean, let's keep making this state great, and more folks are going to keep pouring in, and just, oh, I love that. Expanding our community in all the good ways.
I agree. I agree. I have really enjoyed meeting all of the folks that have come from across the country, and I love just talking cultural exchanges. Like what came as a culture shock to you? Someone from Texas, someone from Utah, someone from Kentucky. And I love that they get to bring a little bit of themselves and educate us on what it's like in other parts of the country. Um, I think it just broadens our horizons. It's like a little silver lining out of a really dark day.
Most definitely. Yep. I actually just had the opportunity to meet with a young trans person who was traveling to Duluth for like a job interview, looking at relocating from a red southern state. And yeah, just like asking her about her story and the experiences of like, what does it mean to be trans in those states versus, being able to feel at least a little bit safe and protected in a state like Minnesota. And it was wild, yeah, to hear. I mean, like, she's not able to access her hormone therapy. And, her family is basically trying to help her get to a new place like Minnesota, hopefully, where she can be safe and access that care that she needs to be healthy and, a contributing member of society or whatever. And it is, you're right. Like, there's so many pieces of different cultures and ways of being that, yeah, just add to all of our Minnesota, cultures as well.
Exactly.
Oh my goodness. Well, I don't know that I've talked about politics so much in a long time. I usually try to kind of like, focus on, working within my community. And so this has been good for me. And hopefully, I feel hopeful that it will also, feel good and be helpful for our community members who tune in and watch, or listen if they're listening on a podcast somewhere. But one of the things that we always ask our guest stars as we're starting to wrap up our time, in our conversation, is just acknowledging that, like, the world is a dumpster fire in so many ways. Every day there's new ways, it seems like, and it is really hard to just keep surviving and to keep hope alive and all of that. And so, what are 1 to 2 ways that you take care of yourself? And hopefully, by you sharing those things, hopefully someone else might be like, oh, I could try that. That might work for me, right? So we can like model how to care for ourselves.
Yes, absolutely. I would say, one of the ways that I do care for myself is I allow people in my support network to help me. Like I have a friend, there are certain times that I'm sure we've all experienced where the house will start to get messy, the laundry will build up. But she has quite a bit of time on her hands, and so it's allowing the people in your life to help you. It's reminding yourself that you're not a burden, that people want to help you, especially if they are offering to help you. Um, and so that is one way I've been practicing kind of the humility that comes with saying, you're right, I do need some help in certain ways. So she'll come over and she'll help me. She'll do some dishes and help me with my laundry, which is so appreciated. The other way, I make sure I get out in community. As much as I get tired and I want to just curl up in bed and scroll TikTok for an hour or two, I make sure at least once or twice a week I get out of the house intentionally with people, specifically trans people, to remind myself like why I'm doing this work, why I am even daring to lead a state of 5.7 million people, because that weight is heavy. It is very heavy. And so I'm reminded that we need to take responsibility for our community. And if I'm the one that's stepping up to do this, it's important that you remind yourself why and for whom you're doing this work. So that's one way that I make sure I care for myself.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that. And I could not agree more on both of those. I need to keep practicing that asking for help, accepting help. It is key. It takes all of us. And I definitely believe we are not meant to live in isolation, even though that is kind of a lot of our go to when things are crazy and wild and scary, is to isolate and just to kind of hunker down and take care of ourselves. But reach out. Yeah, reach out to community, let folks help. Those are such amazing messages. So thanks for sharing those. And yeah, as we're coming to the end, I just want to pop up the link to your campaign website. And for folks who are listening, so that's Kobey for the number 4 governor.com. And we'll also include that link in our show notes as well. So you should be able to scroll down and find that. And yeah, we just want to say thank you again for taking the time to join us, to pre-record and fit us into your busy schedule. I know you're working and now, running this campaign, and you're a busy, busy gal. So we appreciate your time.
Thank you. It has been a pleasure to be on here. And I love connecting with other LGBTQIA plus folks. So, and especially ones across the state. Especially with Trans Refuge, I know there's, at least down here, there's a sentiment that they just cluster in the cities, but I want to make sure that people know they are all across the state. Like we cannot forget our rural LGBTQIA plus brothers, sisters, and siblings.
Yes, don't forget us. We're up here. We're here. We're queer. Oh, goodness. Well, yeah, hopefully you can make your way up here and maybe we can grab coffee or something. But, good luck to you in all that you are doing with the campaign. And just, yeah, thanks again. And for all of you, we want to say thank you to our viewers for tuning in, for following our show and coming along the journey and meeting all of these amazing guest star community members. Yeah, we just got a really big, cool community out here, folks. So get connected. As a reminder, you can check out our events calendar on our website at transnorthland.org/connection. There, that link is. And then, yeah, as a reminder, you can follow us on socials. We're on Facebook, Instagram. We have an email list you can sign up to get our emails. And yeah, connect with us at Trans Northland. We'd love to meet you, see you at an event. And yeah, thank you again for tuning in with us, joining us kind of live. Well, we're live now. And yeah, we will see y'all back in a couple of weeks. And I'm very excited. Our next guest star is going to be Riley Barca, who is going to be joining the live stream next. Riley's a local leader in the community health field with a strong commitment to advancing health equity for our community, LGBT plus community. As a registered nurse and the director of community health for Black Boots Twin Ports, Riley has focused on building community partnerships through expanding access to health services and harm reduction supplies. And so, yeah, we are super excited to have Riley join us. And that'll be the next one will be on April 22nd, which is a couple days before our Be Safe, Get Tested event. So we'll talk a little bit about that event too. So tune in 2 weeks, and we will be back with you then. Take good care, friends.